All right, you guys all know that I'm a massive, massive fan of the Rocky and Creed franchise. I've talked about it a million times here on the channel. But one thing I've never done is brought someone else on to chat with me about this franchise, especially about any of the movies individually. But today I have my good friend Kurt Schmidt here to talk about Creed 3. Kurt, thanks for being on, dude.
Hey, Brett, thanks for having me. What's up?
So, this Creed franchise, you were not really familiar with it until a couple weeks ago when I'm like, dude, you have to watch this Creed franchise. You've got to watch Creed 1 and 2 so that you can go see the third one in the theater. And you're like, I'll get to it. And you did get to it, like, actually pretty rapidly. You ran through the first two movies with your family. Before you went to see this movie, what did you think of the Creed franchise? And, you know, were you a big Rocky guy beforehand? And then also, like, what did your family think of it? Because I know you brought them on the whole deal as well.
Yeah, so I was familiar with the franchise. I just hadn't seen it. I knew that it existed. I'm not completely under a rock. I've seen all the Rockies, probably all of them multiple times. Not the biggest Rocky fan, but I don't know. I've seen them all. Like all the movies, they're good. The Creed movies, man, you were a big push for me to watch them. It was always just something that it's good. All right, I'll get to it sooner or later. The preview for the third one looked really good, and I was really interested in seeing it. And yeah, so with your push, I went out and got the first two movies, watched them with the family, with my wife and two of my kids, and they all loved them. We all loved, like, the first one, like, It was, we were all, like, glued to our seats, like, eyes glued to the screen. It was a damn good movie. So good that we watched the second one, like, the night after. Which rarely happens in our house. To get us all watching the TV like 2 nights in a row like that. That's a rarity for sure. And then to my surprise, like, within a couple days, my wife is like texting me a picture like, hey, like she's got tickets like reserved. Like, should I get them for like the Tuesday, the $5 movie Tuesday, right? The Tuesday after opening weekend. And I'm like, yeah, go for it. But that was completely her idea. I was just going to bring it up like the weekend of.
That's crazy. So they loved it. Like, what did you think of the second film as compared to the first one?
I think I like the second film more. The fighter. Forget like the storyline, but my biggest problem with the first one is I didn't find the fighter to be I don't know, like, challenging enough. He didn't look
not a formidable foe. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he didn't look very imposing. He didn't look very imposing in this movie either.
Yeah, I know they brought him back. You know, they brought him back for another round. I have to agree, and you're not alone in that. Like, I just read an article today about, like, it was all about the Rocky franchise, the Creed franchise, and that each film is only as good as its villain, right?
Yeah.
And that was, like, the one thing that kind of hurt Creed was, even though the villain, quote-unquote villain, ended up being victorious in the end, you kind of didn't know why. You know, you're like, he seems like a run-of-the-mill fighter. I don't know. He wasn't as imposing. At least, like, in the Rocky films, there's always been something about the villains, right? Like, Apollo Creed, he was so, like, he was world-renowned. He had been the champ for a while, and he was very, like, braggadocious. He was very, like, I don't know. He was like an imposing figure, right? Just because he was so bombastic. Like, he was such a shit talker. He was such a showman.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he fights him again in the second film. Okay, then you get to the third one, and you have the Mr. T character. which actually had a lot. I feel like this film, the Creed 3, had a lot of crossover, not only with the third film, but like it had elements from all the films in it. It was, even though we didn't have Sylvester Stallone in it at all, which I feel like was a glaring omission. Like I do feel like that was felt in it. But you're right, absolutely right about the first and the second film. I think I might like the first film better as a film, as like a world builder. But definitely the fight and the villain in Creed 2 were far better. It was far like scarier. It was more imposing. When he just beats the hell out of them in their first fight, you're like, yeah, of course that's what happened.
Yeah.
All right, so getting into Creed 3 then, finally. What did you think, man? So you were a fan of the first two. Your wife is so excited. She buys tickets early for the whole family. What did you think? And this is your first experience with any Creed movie on the big screen, too, and I think that makes a big difference as well. But what did you think of the third film?
I loved it. I thought, for me, it was the best Creed film, and I would rank them like in 3, 2, 1. I'd count them down.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I really like this movie. My family, they all said like, no, it can't be the best because there was no Rocky. Like they're like, where's Rocky? Where's Rocky? And I'm like, I said, like, F Rocky. Who gives a shit? Like I don't care about Rocky. I had enough of Rocky. Like this is, I'm like, this movie's I said like far and away this one was the best. It like. And they touched on. I love the stuff with his family, like with the daughter. I was not expecting it to go like so heavy with her being deaf and everything.
Yeah,
I love that. I mean, they flew through some stuff, but I thought they handled like the whole storyline really good, and it was made. It was a really good movie, man.
Yeah, I feel like this one focused a lot more on the dramatic beats.
Yeah.
And a little less on the, fight, punch aspect. Like, there was a lot more other stuff going on that was like the real draw there. The real magic was in the drama of it, right? And the finding out about this part of his past we didn't know about. And Jonathan Majors was awesome, dude. He was so awesome in this. Like, I'll tell you what, I've seen this and I've seen Ant-Man. I think, and I loved it. I think he was the best part of the Ant-Man film. But far and away, this character is better than that character.
Yeah.
Jonathan Majors is, so far I'm liking him in just about everything I watch with him in it. I've been saying for a while, like, he now is like the Michael B. Jordan of like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Where he's like in everything and really good in everything.
Yeah.
Like it's only a matter of time before he's the sexiest man alive on whatever Time magazine as well.
I don't know. He'd be the ugliest, sexiest man alive.
Right. I agree. I agree. But look, man, a lot of people do not agree with you. A lot of people find him very attractive.
I guess, man. They're sitting across from each other in like the restaurant or whatever.
Yeah.
At the very beginning when they first get back together, and there's like the extreme close up, and they go back and forth, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, man, that is one ugly mother. like holy shit. And he looked good, but man, it looked so believable. He was so good. Majors was so good in that, man. I felt like it was a guy, like I felt like I could just walk into him on the street, like he. Yeah. I don't know, man. He looked, his mannerisms and stuff, man. He looked like a bum or whatever, right? Like a guy down. Yeah,
he looked like a guy who just got out of prison. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He sold it well, and like I said, I've seen him in a lot of different roles, very, very different roles. From like period pieces that like took place in the like whatever the 50s, 60s, whenever Lovecraft Country took place. I can't remember, but really early U.S. history.
Yeah.
And then I saw him as Kang the Conqueror. I see him now as this character, and it's like his acting ability is fantastic. Like, I would say one thing about Michael B. Jordan is like he's kind of similar. He's like a Denzel Washington, where like his characters are kind of similar, no matter what he's doing. Like, there's just an element of like, oh yeah, that's Michael B. Jordan on the screen, right? But when it comes to him, and especially in this film, you see it's like, damn, man, he really can act, because that's a different guy than I saw in other films that I've seen him in. Very different guy. Just the way he like, and he comes off as like really kind of timid in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And almost like mumbling, and it's hard to make out what he's saying, and he's like, I don't know. But as the movie progresses, he gets more and more like vocal and menacing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it turns out he's doing stuff behind the scenes to ensure that he gets a shot. Like, he wasn't fucking around. Like, he came to get his shot. He's like, I don't have time. Like, he's older than Michael B. Jordan, or he's older than Adonis Creed in this.
Yeah.
He's never had a professional fight. So it is like, it's a far-fetched idea to think this guy's going to come out of prison and get a shot for the title. It's like, but this is a theme in so many Rocky films.
Yeah.
That's why I think it still works. The very first Rocky film was about the greatest heavyweight champ in the world giving some no-name Italian guy from Philadelphia a shot at the title for no damn good reason.
Yeah.
Like, that was the premise of the Rocky film. So this totally worked for me. I get why people seeing this who are not big Rocky heads would be like, dude, that's so unbelievable. Like, yeah, it is. But they made it a point to showcase that in the movie, too. He's like, that's not how it works, man. Like, I can't just do that for you, And the only reason it ended up happening was very similar to the first Rocky film. The guy that Apollo was supposed to fight in that film got hurt or dropped out of the fight last minute, and they needed someone, and they needed a gimmick to sell this fight. And the gimmick was, give this no-name guy a chance. Every no-name guy in America wants to watch that.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, that actually brings up like the only flaw like I find in the movie is that part is how we get this fight and how Drago's hand gets broken or whatever. That's like the only problem I have with it, because as soon as it happened, I'm like, oh, well, that's Dame's, like that's his bud. Like, he paid that guy to do it or whatever. Like, he's doing him a favor, doing him a solid with this.
It was no surprise.
Like,
you're right.
No, like that was clear as day. And then the only way we find out is like when the mom pulls out the picture, and it's like, man, there is no investigative reporting in this world, in Creed's world. Nobody asks if this guy's an ex-con, if this guy has a violent history or anything.
Right. Yeah, you're right. There wasn't a whole lot about his violent past, and he did, It kind of had a violent past. That in the story, he actually just pulled a gun, right? That's all he did.
Well, but not that guy, but like not Dame's violent past, but like the beater, the guy that broke his hand. Like, he was friends with Dame. Like, there's a prison picture, right? I mean, it had to be. Right. So like that guy, whether he was violent or not, I mean, he's an ex-con, right? So at least like his unsavory past at the very least.
You're right. Like, they presented it as if it was a big reveal, and it was like, to anyone that's really paying attention, it's so obvious. This guy wants a shot. There's there's no way he can get it because there's already a fight lined up. How are we going to get him in a fight with the champ? Very quickly, because fights don't just have, like, the champion defends his belt once a year, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
So if that fight would have went down, he would have had to wait a whole nother year to fight him if he got in there. So it was so obvious that it was like a setup to get him in there. It was no surprise to me. And I'm not sure how much they thought they were really going to fool the audience with that, but they did have to, I think, address it directly.
Yeah.
For people, you got to spoon feed some people.
Yeah, you got to do something with it, I think.
And you have to say it too. You can't just leave it open.
Yeah, exactly. And it's but like for me, like it's nothing. Like they gloss over. I mean, it happens. It comes and goes. It just moves the story along, and it's just like a little blip. There's That's literally, I think, the only bad thing I could say about the movie. Like, the only detracting thing I could say.
Uh-huh. What did you think of... So, Michael B. Jordan directed this one, okay?
Yeah.
And normally, also, Sylvester Stallone at least had a hand in writing the script of every Rocky film and both of the first two Creed films. But he did not have a hand in writing this film. He was credited as a producer, and that's it. So no acting in it, no writing in it. None of the creative process was Sylvester Stallone. In fact, the reason he supposedly, and I don't know how true this is, because they might have just wanted to phase him out. And if you watch Creed 2, it's clear that they were setting up his exit. So I don't understand what the controversy is around Sly Stallone and Rocky not being in this film. They ended the last film purposely to phase him out. He ends it by saying, it's your time now. He sits down, and at the end of the film, he goes up to Toronto to see his son finally, like rekindle his relationship with his son and meet his grandson. So you're led to believe, like, okay, now Rocky is moving on with his own life, and now it's Creed's time to move on with his own life.
Yeah.
So I don't know why the controversy, or why people so much are like, where's Rocky? It's like, well, he's in Toronto being a grandpa. Like that's exactly where he's supposed to be. That's how that's how this story has went. I actually made a video several years ago when Creed 2 was going to come out, where I thought, just by the trailer for Creed 2, and because I thought it was time to do it, that they were going to kill off Rocky, like dramatically kill him off, and that was going to be part of the drama of the film, and like a reason for Creed to fight, and he'd have to do it on his own now, right? Because in Rocky 3, the same thing happened. Rocky's trainer died right as he was getting beat by Clubber Lang. So he got his ass beat. His trainer died. He was questioning his own ability, right? And like, why he's doing this? Who is he? Why does he box? Why does he fight? Why does he care about this fight? All this stuff. What's his legacy? That was a perfect, they had the ability to do that with Creed 2, because the same thing happened. The only difference was they didn't kill his trainer off. I thought that it would have. Go ahead.
I thought he was dead the whole movie.
You thought he was dead?
I thought like it was like Sixth Sense stuff, like where he was, because man, especially the way that thing starts, the way the movie starts, like Creed's getting his trainers or whatever, and then everybody walks out of the room, and then Rocky just walks up, and then the rest of the movie, man, I'm watching it, and it's like Rocky doesn't interact with too many people. Like you could have him like Sixth Sense in that movie, and it works, I think. And maybe it does work, man. Maybe he's like seeing his son, like maybe his son's in heaven. Maybe Canada's heaven. It's up above us.
Okay, all right, off the rails here. Listen. Here's one thing I did want to say, though. Like, the reason I even brought this up was because Michael B. Jordan's directing. So the first film was directed by Ryan Coogler, okay, who did Black Panther. Who did Fruitvale Station, who's clearly a huge fan of Michael B. Jordan. He puts him in, like, every film that he makes. But after Fruitvale Station, which was kind of like his indie intro into filmmaking, he did the first Creed film, and it was like a massive success. Everyone's like, wow, this guy's the real deal. Like, 2 movies in a row, really great. the second film was directed by a guy named Stephen Cable, I believe, Stephen Cable Jr. And then this one is Michael B. Jordan. Now, there were some clear stylistic differences in this film.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you picked up on it because you've just recently watched the other ones back to back. Now,
Yeah.
so one of the kind of negatives that I had about, maybe it was just in the second film, is the fighting was great. It was intense. But something about the way it was filmed made it seem smaller than it was. Like, this huge fight in Russia felt like it should have been so bigger feeling when you're watching it. And it felt really small for some reason to me.
Yeah.
Now, even before I saw Creed 3, I knew, like, Michael B. had announced that, like, you're going to see some differences in the fight choreography and stuff in this film and how it's filmed, how it's captured. And that was super obvious in the first fight, in the very beginning. And I was wondering if they were going to keep this up throughout the entire film, but they didn't. Where they did that, like, you're kind of focusing in on the weak points that Adonis Creed is seeing in his opponent.
Yeah.
It's like showing, oh, there's this rib shot. I can hit this guy right, like, there it is. It's a glaring opening. And as soon as it comes open again, I'm going to hit him there. That's going to win me the fight. And I figured that they would probably continue that throughout the film, but they didn't. I was kind of surprised by that. But they did do something in the final fight that was drastically different than anything we've seen before in any of these films.
Yeah.
And that was like it was very stylistic. Like, first, they did something that I really liked, which was take out everyone.
Yeah.
It was just these two in the ring, and there was nothing else around. There was no audience. There was no commentators. There was no family, nothing. It was one-on-one, mano a mano. They were the only people that existed. I liked that. I thought that was cool. What I wasn't as big a fan of was the superimposed, like, prison bars and rolled up mattress appearing in the corner. But what did you think of that? Because I'm sure some people like that.
That stuff, I like that whole part. The whole fight scene at the end.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything I didn't like about it. I just felt like it was telling more of their story. It was bringing back. I really like the way that they unfolded the past into the present and how that's affecting them, even in this fight where it shouldn't be, where he should be focused on what's in front of him. This stuff it's like too strong to keep buried or whatever, right?
Yes.
That's what I got out of it, at least.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, it was definitely, like, it was obvious that's what they were doing. I just don't know how much it worked for me. Like, it came off a little cheesy when the prison bars dropped down and appeared behind him. But no, the actual fight choreography, the actual fight, oh my God, how jacked were both of these dudes? Like,
both, right.
Creed was bigger than he was in the previous two films.
Yeah.
And then here comes Jonathan Majors, like, whoa!
Yeah.
And you never would have guessed it under his bum attire in the beginning, right?
Yeah, right.
Would you imagine he was that shredded underneath that bum attire? Like, holy God.
It's tough to – we talked about the first fighter in Creed, and they brought him back in this one.
Yeah.
But then, like, the heavyweight champ, man, he did not – the whole time, like, my 12-year-old daughter sitting next to me, she even said, like, he doesn't look that big when they say heavyweight champ. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? If you pay attention in the first Rocky film, they're light heavyweights. They're not heavyweights.
Yeah.
And so it must be in the second film when he has worked his way up to heavyweight somehow.
Okay.
Because I think it was just glaringly obvious that even Michael B. Jordan was not a heavyweight size in the first film. It was like, oh yeah, he's jacked, but I don't know about a heavyweight, you know, and definitely not the guy he was fighting. Did not look like a heavyweight. But yeah, the guy in this one that was like the new champion, dude, he looked like a middleweight. Like, he looked small. I was like, what? They're trying to put these guys in the same. I mean, it's going to look ridiculous when they get in the ring, and it did.
Yeah, I thought so.
A lot of crossover, like I said, with other Rocky films, like, but they did enough to, like, they did the whole. In Rocky 3, at the beginning, they start off with him defending his title a bunch of times. It's like a montage.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's him retiring. He retires from boxing, and this kind of street guy shows up in Clubber Lang and challenges him and calls him soft. Says he's gone soft. Like, he used to be like this tough, streetwise champ. But now he's like a paper champion. He's only fighting guys he can beat, and he's gone soft with this, lap of luxury. Same kind of elements here, right? This guy comes in, he's like, look at you, you're soft now, you're domesticated, you're this, you're that. I'm the street guy. I just got out of prison. A lot of the same elements, draws him out of retirement, right, to fight him. But it did enough, I feel like, to make it its own thing. It really did a good job at separating itself from the Rocky franchise, I feel like, and feeling like its own thing, definitively now.
Yeah, I thought so. I really enjoyed that. I liked one thing that seemed like glaringly obvious to me. I don't know if anybody else picks up. I'm sure other people have, or maybe you. When they're in Adonis's home, and you see it's like his, I don't know what, like maybe his trophy room or whatever.
Yeah.
It's everything from him, and then I guess maybe his dad and stuff.
Yeah.
But all of his belts and his trunks and his gloves are flanked by 2 basketball jerseys. Now they're in LA. He's an LA guy, right? It's flanked by, there's a Shaq jersey. That's the first one we see, and we see that one a lot. But then on the right hand of the trophy case, we got Kobe too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I picked up on that right away. I saw that, and I'm like, oh man, like that's like it's like I don't know, they're touching on that. That I think that worked towards the storyline that they were pushed, the storyline of the movie with the brothers, like the brotherhood between these two guys.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. But
fighting,
also the rivalry, right?
The rivalry, and then the coming back at the end too. Like it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really worked with the story, and I don't know, man. It stood out to me like a big golden sore thumb because it's like the only thing in that room that isn't his, that isn't Adonis,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was purposeful.
Oh,
like, not only because of his ties to LA, right, which make it. It's like, of course, this guy would be a huge Lakers fan, right?
Yeah.
But also, like you're saying, like I'm sure that was intentional. I'm sure that was part of Michael B. Jordan's direction that did that.
Yeah.
And,
I bet.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought like it added a little bit to the story for me. It added a little bit more to the movie.
And a wonderful directorial debut for Michael B. Jordan, like directing and acting in a film, directing for the very first time. I thought he did a hell of a job at his first outing.
Yeah, I thought so too, man. It was
everything from the fight choreography to the the interactions between characters, and like it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, very impressive, I thought.
One more thing that I want to touch on before we close it up. I know I said we were going to do like a 10 or 15 minute video. No, we're going all in.
It can't be that long, is it?
I don't know. Maybe we're going like 30 minutes. But anyway.
All right. Yeah.
The way they closed out the movie, 2 things I want to say here. One, it definitely did something different compared to any of the rest of the franchise, like I said, where, the antagonist and the protagonist are like, they're not best buds or anything, but they're like acknowledging each other in the end and saying, hey, like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was bad. Like, all of it comes to, like, I'm glad that they did that in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just ending it on the fight ending.
Yeah.
Because that would have taken so much away from the film if they didn't have some sort of conversation after.
Yeah.
And then number 2, I feel like, listen, one of the main staples in the Rocky franchise is just how many times he was pulled out of retirement, right? So he retired in Rocky 3, and then they made 3 more Rocky films, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, and also, my favorite Rocky film is Rocky 3. It's not everyone's favorite. In fact, I don't think it's most people's favorite. You either love the original the most, or like people love Rocky 4 because he fights the Russian and it's so crazy. But that movie's cheesy as fuck. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's great. It's fun as hell. And the fight is epic. But there's some really silly elements to that. Either way, Rocky 3 is my all-time favorite. And one of my favorite things about it is the fact that his rival for the past 2 films comes back to help him train for the fight of his life at that point, right? He's trained by his former nemesis. And then they end up becoming basically best friends after that. I feel like this was a perfect setup going forward for that same type of story going forward. Like, I can see, what's his name? What's his? Dame.
Yeah.
Damien Anderson. Okay. I can see him helping, now that Rocky's gone, same thing that happened in Rocky 3. I could see him helping him train for some even more vicious opponent going forward, if they do decide to do more films. And let's be honest, this made a shit ton of money. It made $100 and some million opening weekend, which is fucking phenomenal. I mean, that's like like Ant-Man money. I mean, that's like Marvel money. That's great money.
Yeah.
Great money for the 8th film in a fucking franchise that started in 1976. That's crazy.